Critical Role recaps Season 2, Episode 13. So we started off this episode immediately with some combat against the Crick Assassin that they found in the sewers that was dressed in the all-black armor and the hooks and everything, kind of insect-like looking creature. The combat went pretty smoothly. He had a lot of interesting tricks that he pulled out. The Mighty Nine was trying to subdue him and trying to talk to him as opposed to kill him. And so they ended up using non-lethal damage to knock him unconscious, and then removed all of his gear, tied him up, and woke him back up to have a conversation. The gist of the conversation was that he and one other person were sent there to steal this beacon, the glowing dodecahedron that he had with them, that the party found and had thrown a rag over after Caleb looked at it briefly. Caleb attempted to use identify magic on it, but couldn't. It was like too powerful for him to figure out what it was. However, when looking at it, it did kind of open up like this void within him. He was given the option by Matt to look deeper and continue to look into it, and he decided not to, but it kind of intimidated him and scared him, and he was not really sure what to make of it. The Crick Assassin basically just said, give me the beacon and I'll be on my way and we'll never see each other again. But if you don't give me the beacon, I'm gonna kill you all. The Crick Assassin, who they had discovered was a drow when they unmasked him, also said that the beacon was used in order to bring back his people so that they could continue their life. So some sort of rebirth or resurrection magic that it was involved in. And so they debated for a little bit, the party did, what to do with him exactly. And they ended up settling on giving him his beacon back as well as his armor, but they took his boots, his throwing knives, his sword, as well as like 112 platinum, so a bunch of gold, over 1,000 gold pieces that they took from him. And then they sent him on his way and they went their own separate way. But as they were emerging from the sewers, they heard a commotion, and it turned out that the Crick Assassin that they had just let go ended up getting captured and killed anyway. So then they very quickly came up with a rough plan of getting this beacon back. Jester went forward and kind of tripped and made the guard drop the beacon, and Caleb, disguised as one of the Crown's guard, snatched it out of the air and caught it and started walking along with them, but kind of trying to pull back a little bit, which he eventually did manage to kind of veer off in the other direction, and at the same time not used a spell, Silent Illusion, to make it look like the orb was off in the distance over somewhere else. And so two guards split off to go after Caleb and be like, hey buddy, where are you taking that? We're supposed to take it back to wherever, to the guard house or whatever. And they used a few more tricks and not continue the illusion, had it float up in the air and kind of like start melting and steaming and dissipating in order to continue a distraction. And then Caleb used charm on the one remaining guard who was still talking to him and convinced him that he was going to take it on his own in order to prevent any sort of dangerous explosion from harming other people. The whole group actually managed to make off with this beacon, which we still don't really know what it does. After that, they tried to meet back up with some of the Knights of Requital in order to get their payment and kind of figure out what the plan was to do next. They can't seem to find Kara, which was one of the more shifty members of the group, but they do end up finding Dolan and his buddy Horace. Ford convinces Dolan to stick around and to see this plan through to the end, to try and place himself in the position of the recently deceased High Richter. Dolan asks the Mighty Nine to help Horace escape the city. They decide to go ahead and sleep for the night and not try and break him out of the city that night. A lot of character building in this episode, not a whole lot of plot development really, but some intrigue and some interesting character development. That night, Caleb sleeps in the cellar where they found the skeleton along with Knot. He sleeps in there with the beacon, and he has a pretty peculiar dream that doesn't really seem to point to anything specific, but he has a weird dream that seems to be related to the beacon. So then they want to get a lead-lined box to hide the beacon in to prevent scrying from being able to scry in on the orb, on the dodecahedron, and find them. So they decide to go visit Pumat's soul and ask him if he has something like that already available, so they could pay a little bit of a premium for something that's already... While in the invulnerable vagrant, they pick up some more potions. Caleb grabs a scroll of Shocking Grasp, as well as a Scroll of Shield. So he picks up a couple new spells that he should be able to inscribe into his book and add to his repertoire. Oh, and Knot pays 250 gold to have her platinum flask turned into a bottomless platinum flask that would never run out of liquor. And they do manage to get a already finished lead-lined box for preventing scrying from Pumat Soul that they pick up for just 15 gold. And then they go back to their inn and they put the dodecahedron, this beacon, they put it into the box and then put the box into Jester's haversack. Ford that morning tried to take Horst and go ahead and escort him out of town. But when they showed up to the gatehouse, the portcullis was down and there was just swarms of guards all over the place, and they were only letting people through one by one, individually interviewing and checking over each person. So they decided, yeah, maybe we don't want to try and go out this way, and just kind of swung around back to the inn. Also, interestingly, Claudia, the owner of the inn, the Leaky Tap that they had been staying, that night, Jester went and spoke to her, trying to see if she had a lead safe. Jester found out that Claudia was actually selling the inn. So then they decided to go to the evening nip, figure out a way of smuggling Horus out of town, and also to meet up with the gentleman, and also to try and find Kara. So kind of like a multi-purpose visit that they're doing here. When they get there, someone there seems to recognize Mollymock, but calls him Lucian and starts to walk over to him to embrace him and give him a hug, and you know, like a long lost friend kind of thing. And that's where the episode cuts off. And Mollymock the whole while is acting as if no, he has no idea who this Lucian is or this person that's talking to him, and says, I think you've got the wrong guy, kind of thing. So we don't know if this is some sort of mistaken identity or if Mollymock is playing off something and actually does have multiple identities and stuff. They attempted to do an insight check, but the episode had ended, and so Matt was like, no, we'll have to do that at the beginning of next time. So we ended on another cliffhanger. The only instance of combat was at the very beginning, and it was with a very wounded Crick Assassin, but he did have some interesting abilities. So if you like combat, you could just watch like the first 15 to half an hour of it to see that. He had some interesting stuff going on, definitely an interesting class. Other than that, it was mostly character development. Everyone did also level up to level 4, and they rolled their hit dice on for the first time on air. Yeah, I think that's it. It was overall not, I mean, as much occurred plot development wise as in the previous episode, but stuff is definitely, wheels are turning and stuff is in the works and in motion. And we have another cliffhanger ending, so we'll have to see what's going on with this person that seems to recognize Mollymock as a different person than the group knows him as. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.